Okay, episode 3 of the Canon Event Pod. So following on from yesterday's 2-2 draw against PSV, we are through to the quarterfinals once again, second year in a row, which is fantastic. And off to face Madrid for the second time in the Champions League history for us. And I think what is that, 19 years on from when we last faced them. And I think we all pretty much remember what happened that time. So let's hope that we can recreate that. I didn't end up going to the game yesterday, just due to the fact that I physically can't obviously walk at the moment. But even if I could, I probably wouldn't have gone anyway because I don't live I don't live that far away. But midweek, a dead rubber game, Champions League, I probably would have just let you take the reins on that one. But yeah, Sim, how's things been? How are you doing?
Yeah, Aaron. Episode 3. I had a very surreal and tensionless night at the Emirates yesterday, to the extent of which I ended up basically having like 3 tickets that I didn't really know what to do with, which says everything about the game in of itself. But it was good. It was good. As in, it's nice sometimes to go to a game knowing that whatever happens, it doesn't really matter, unless, of course, PSV managed to pull off the greatest La Remontada that has ever been pulled off by any team, and managed to score 7 goals past us, which thankfully did not happen. But yeah, it was a nice jovial atmosphere. It felt like an Emirates Cup game, or something like that. You take the family, everybody's having a jolly, I guess, because it was an evening game, a little bit different from the Emirates Cup in so far as that there were still lots of people who had definitely had lots to drink, and none more so than the PSV fans, who I think made the game and the atmosphere excellent. They had previously gone to the Wimbledon-Cheltenham game the day before, as I saw on social media, and had basically been kind of on a session since then. And you saw it last night. They celebrated every shot. Even when they conceded, they literally did not stop singing. They just continued singing. So we were just actually just above them, more or less. And to the extent, and this is the funniest thing, they were singing the how done now the song's gone out of my head for some reason. We won the league at White Hart Lane twice song, LA, that song. They had their own version, but and obviously Arsenal did not sing a single song the whole time, but because they were singing it, it encouraged all the Arsenal fans to sing their version at the same time. So yeah, thank God for the PSV fans, because I think it would have been really, really boring without them. So yeah, overall, it was weird, but it was good. And yeah, we haven't come out of the game with any injuries or any massive concerns, which I think is exactly what we wanted in the end, and at least gave some players a rest. So yeah, what was your feeling as you were watching it from home? A bit of some thoughts on the lineup and the selection of left
Yeah, I
back
think
FC. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, literally, yeah. So I think agreed. I think it's just the most important thing for us. I think was just not come out with any injuries, considering how this season's gone. So it was nice to kind of get out of that game unscathed, which is great. It's interesting as well. I think one thing you mentioned was kind of going out and it being kind of like Emirates Cup feel. I feel like very rarely, especially this season, have we had games where we don't kind of feel that nervousness and anxiousness going in, because I think obviously we aren't really putting teams to bed that early anymore because it's been a bit difficult this season. But 2, because obviously I think as expectations rise, then your anxiousness also rises, and each game kind of feels like a league title kind of challenge, or even like a cup final, so it's nice sometimes. I think there was another game this season where I felt that way as well. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been another Champions League game, but it was just nice to not have to kind of feel really anxious about it. So that's a nice feeling, I can imagine. I was watching it at home. I actually had the Real Madrid game on. I was switching between the games basically. I was gonna put the Real Madrid game on the TV and then the Arsenal game on the iPad.
Being simulcast, man, just being
Yeah.
it's like being at the pub but in your house, essentially.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, as much as and I'm not sure, there's probably other Arsenal fans out there like this as well. I can't help but watch our team, you know. it's like I try to act like, I'm not that interested, and I'll put that other game on, and then I put that other game on, and I'm like, I kind of just want to watch my players. I want to see what Rice is doing. I want to see what Sterling's doing. I want to see what Zinchenko's doing. I want to know how the guys who need more minutes are playing. So all I would do, and it was working out really well actually. Every time the ball would go out in the Real Madrid game, I would just put it on the Arsenal game. Then the Arsenal game would have a bit. Then the ball would go out in the Arsenal game, and then I'd go back to the Real Madrid game. So it was good to kind of switch between them. And yeah, it was nice. I mean, I can't tell you that I was like 100% focused in the entire time, but I felt like that's what the players probably felt like as well. They were probably feeling like, there was not as much effort as they might have put in. I did notice that they were quite on it initially at the beginning, at the start of the game, which is good. But kind of backtracking from that, I mean, I obviously have a few thoughts on the lineup, which is great. But what were your initial thoughts when I think you sent the lineup to me, didn't you? And then we had a chat about it, didn't we?
So a quick chat up. Yeah, I mean, it's always good for podcasting when you tell all your listeners, all 5 of our listeners, that we weren't really paying attention to the game. I was watching with PSV fans and you were largely watching the Atletico game. But good save. I think left back FC. We should have been playing with more left backs from the beginning of the season. We might have won more games. I don't know. No, but all jokes aside, I think it was weird seeing front 3 of Sterling, Merino, and Tierney. I'm sure if you'd asked, I was reading an Athletic article this morning, and James Manicola said, I'm sure if you had asked Mikel Arteta at the beginning of the season to imagine the weirdest front line that he could have had at any game, he wouldn't have even conceived that he would have had Sterling and Merino and Kieran Tierney playing left wing. But overall, yeah, I think, look, it's good. It's good that I was a bit freaking out, actually. I was thinking, oh God, he's going to go super heavy. He's going to play all of the players who definitely needed a rest because, yeah, I'm just standard pessimistic sort of Arsenal fan. But he didn't, and I think that's good. And I like also that, when Eri got a proper rest, Ødegaard looked like he also needed a real rest. You saw Kivior come back. Ben White definitely needed some minutes as well, to get him back to a place where hopefully he can contribute a decent amount towards the end of the season. And yeah, I think exactly what we had hoped for, really. Seeing Zinchenko play in midfield was a bit interesting. I think we'd rarely seen him play there, to be fair. But yeah, talk us through what if you have any immediate thoughts on the lineup as well. But then
not really.
Maybe the
I mean,
goal.
to me, there's the one thing actually, what you mentioned actually, I want to pick up on was actually the Zinchenko midfield thing, which is quite interesting. So I think what I saw online was that a lot of people were kind of like, why have we not done this earlier? He's obviously crafted an absolutely fantastic goal, and in a direct kind of comparison to Ødegaard, who's playing at the moment, it's not great for Ødegaard's kind of PR right now that someone who's come in as a left footer, someone who just smashed a goal in bottom corner like that. But what I would say is, like, my reservations about Zinchenko playing midfield are because I've watched him in the Premier League there, and it's a lot harder. So he made a comment actually about it later on in the interview, saying, like, to Declan and Ødegaard and Martin, like, you guys run around so much. And that's the thing, it's a very, very high intense position. Like I said, I mentioned it probably every single podcast. We both play midfield, obviously not to the extent of a Premier League footballer, but regardless, or in relativity, we understand that position is a lot of running. It's a lot of running, and it's a lot of thankless running as well. I used to play, I was playing for a football team maybe like 3 years ago now, and so I must have been about 27 or something. And there were a few younger kids there. Maybe he was like 18 or 19, and he wanted to play centre mid. And we were playing, and we were training and stuff like that. And kind of like 3/4 into the game, or even after the game, I think he said, like, that wasn't fun. That wasn't a fun game. And I just turned around to him and I said, listen, man, it's not fun. Like, you have to suffer. Like, in these positions, you might have fun for 5 minutes in the game, but eventually the more you do it and the more you become like obsessed with that kind of pain and that suffering and that effort in midfield, you start to love it to the point where, at that point for me, I love it. Like, I love working my ass off in midfield and like literally just being dead on my feet and just being there constantly. And I think that's the thing that players who don't play midfield, when they then come and play midfield, they finally understand. When you first start doing that, that's not a fun job. It's not a fun job. Not every game's going to be picking the ball up, doing nice pirouettes and switching it left and right, and doing that. Most of the time, you're just working and running and pressing and throwing for the ball and getting moving it. Very rarely are you going to be playing at a high level in a high intense game and enjoy playing centre midfield. It's the hardest position, and for me, it's the hardest position to play in the pitch for a reason. And that's one of the main reasons why, when people have kind of asked, why is Zinchenko playing like more often in that position? It's because I've seen him in that position for us, and I've seen him in that position for Man City, and he loses it a lot, because it's tough. The only time I've ever seen him really play really well in that position is for Ukraine when he plays international football. And again, I think we all know, really, international football is a slight step down, if not a larger step down from club football, and that's why he's okay to play in that position. Whereas at the top level, there's a reason why he doesn't play there. He's obviously got a technical ability. He obviously can pass the ball and pass through lines, and he did do that for us in probably one of our best seasons in recent history, back in a couple of years ago. But ultimately, you always tend to get found out from a dual perspective and a defensive perspective, So kind of went off a bit track there. His goal was great, absolutely fantastic, and I think he played really, really well. But let's be honest, I think he's playing there because we're 7-1 up on aggregate, But what were your thoughts about his goal and his positioning?
I think not much more to say really. I think you nailed it. I think that there's very little to lose in playing him. He's now third choice left back as far as it goes, which was his primary position. So I wouldn't be surprised that this might be one of the last times you really see him starting even for Arsenal now, before what could end up happening in the summer that he ends up leaving. So yeah, you couldn't have summarized it better. I think the intensity at Premier League level to play there for 90 minutes or even 60, 70 minutes is, it's tough. And if to be fair, even in the season where he was absolutely killing it, he was a bit of an unknown quantity at left back doing that sort of inverted thing, he wouldn't last the full 90 either. And he's always had a bit of a dicey, yeah, exactly right. And he's always had a bit of a dicey injury record as well. So it's unsurprising really that, he hasn't been given it. But I think my earlier point was just that I'm glad that we were able to just be that relaxed about the game that we could play Zinchenko there and no one really cared how he played. And then he ended up scoring an absolute banger. So, I mean...
But what I would mention, right, is two things on that point, actually. Is one, the season where he played kind of more in that area was because Partey and Xhaka were both playing there. And really, in reality, Xhaka, even though he would kind of run ahead of the ball a lot, he was very responsible, like getting back in and sitting in that area when Zinchenko would maybe go ahead of the ball. And on top of that, another point I was going to make is that actually we weren't very secure yesterday. We were very open in midfield yesterday for that very reason, open. And Declan Rice
was running through the guy who scored their second goal. Name eludes me now, but
straight through, straight through, because there's no one there. Because the thing is, like, he will take as much as like we love like taking risks, and we understand like like for example, let's just contrast it to the Liverpool game against PSG, right? And Liverpool really all season, to be honest with you, they don't really care about the ball going straight through the middle of their pitch, right? Because they have confidence that they're going to defend their box very well with Van Dijk and Konate, and they very much do. They do it very, very, very well. But it's so easy to play through them. And the thing with us is that like we just don't want to allow that because we don't think that we're going to outscore teams. Whereas with them, they're happy to do that. So that's why, like, as much as like Zinchenko, great technician and everything, there's a reason, like, because we can see yesterday why he doesn't play them more often, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And why also, Arteta hasn't looked to him as a solution when we've been struggling with rejigging the team and trying to share the load of the minutes and stuff. He hasn't really trusted him necessarily. But I guess that brings us on to a nice point of someone he has, let's say, in the United game, he completely overlooked, but it was a no-brainer that he would start him. Bit of razzle dazzle, Raheem redeeming himself a bit in this game. His intervention, or let's say the way he managed to spin away from in the first goal, the defender, and then able to get it into Zinchenko was really good. And then obviously he made the second goal for Declan Rice, which I know we'll talk about in a bit more detail in terms of how good he was again yesterday. Sorry, but tell me, I know that you even have a bit of history in terms of playing at a similar time as to Raheem Sterling as well. Talk us through sort of, is this game the changing moment for him in his Arsenal career? And are we going to get the best out of him now between now and May? Or are we, is this just a bit of a flash in the pan performance against a pretty poor PSV side?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think essentially we kind of came up in that kind of professional amateur kind of football range around the same time. We're very similar ages, so we existed around the same areas, around the kind of northwest London area. So I've always been in and around and followed his career quite closely, which has been really, really cool to see him kind of just like elevate from kind of the QPR to Liverpool and then onto Man City, and then obviously I still followed his career quite closely because, I mean, let's be honest, Raheem Sterling is one of the success stories in English football, and he should be, acclaimed as that. He's been fantastic for his whole career. It's not surprising. Like, we talked about this in the first episode with players like Fabregas and Rooney and Sterling, and there's other players that have lost thought in the process of it now. But when you're that good from that young and you play a lot of minutes, there's a normal kind of just like, downturn of your career in terms of your quality to when you get towards your 30s, because you just played so much football. And even then, in reality, like, I think yesterday he was pissed off, right? Yeah, no worries. You good?
Sorry, delivery man. Yeah, Karen.
No worries. Yeah. I was saying, like, he can tell, you can tell he was pissed off, right? He's obviously quite hurt by the fact that he's not getting minutes in games where he probably feels he should. And I can understand that. I mean, it must be hard for him, knowing how good he is and how good he was and all the things he's achieved, to then look onwards and look at players like, again, this is no like offense to people like Kieran Tierney and things like that, but when you look at a left back coming on in place of you when your team needs a goal, it's going to hurt, right? Because internally what you can offer. And I think, he showed that yesterday. He showed that he can still perform at, let's be honest, we're talking about the top level here. We're talking about Champions League knockout stage game. And he played very well yesterday. I thought his intervention for the first goal was great. His turn and his pass was fantastic. And that opened up, obviously, Zinchenko to shoot. And I was really, really impressed with his second assist, really impressed. That is the Raheem Sterling that we all know and love. Getting the ball, driving past one, driving past someone else, standing the ball up in the box for, Declan Rice to head that in. I thought he had a great performance. I thought that, I was really hoping that he would score when he went through. But again, it's hard. Running, people just expected him to just score, right?
Yeah, the energy in the ground, man. I think I couldn't have described it enough to you how much everybody really wanted him to score, which is in of itself, like, I think it says a lot about how much he struggled this season, because you really wanted him. Like, everybody can see that he's been sort of just sad. He just looks sad and looks frustrated, and you just want him to be able to get that goal and cap off what's been a really good performance for him. And
he's a really great professional, right?
Oh, for sure. I think the way he's conducted himself throughout, he hasn't remotely complained, and actually all of his comments post game really gave you the sense of, look, he understands the situation that he's in. He's very grateful for being able to have the opportunity at Arsenal, and he obviously clearly respects Arteta enormously. And so therefore you feel sorry for the guy, really. And I guess that in of itself is a shame, right? I'm sure if Raheem Sterling, I don't think he's listening to this, but if he were, he'd be like, being pitied is the worst thing. And so that's why I think yesterday's performance hopefully is enough to give him a bit of confidence that he can actually contribute now. And obviously his cup tie, he's not able to play for us on Sunday. But maybe in the next couple of Premier League games before the Real Madrid one, when he's then obviously suspended, he can make some really meaningful contributions. And I think it's going to be so vital, because we're going to have to manage the load of Martinelli as he slowly gets back into the team. Trossard's also, he's been pretty off the boil-ish in the last few games too. Waneri, it's imperative that you manage his load, because no one expected him to play over 1,000 minutes this season, let alone already in March he's played that much, So we really need him to step up, and I hope, yeah, this game gave him the confidence that he needs,
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah,
100%. I think like you said, I think I don't like have any pity for him. I don't I like that's not the emotion I feel for him. I feel more like frustration more than anything because I know that he knows he's good enough. You can see it in him that he can contribute, and it's just about letting that happen. I think you know there's just moments in seasons where if the goal goes in, if he has a good performance, it just takes a bit of confidence, and then I think he can really contribute, like you said. But yeah, I think for the most part, the game went the way we wanted it to. Obviously, end up 2-2. I wanted to ask you, um, what was your kind of opinion on like the defense? Just a quick point. Like, how did you feel about like Ben White, Kiwior kind of coming into the starting lineup?
yeah.
Gabriel obviously being there again and kind of putting in another 90-minute performance. What are your thoughts about those guys quickly? How did you feel?
Well, I won't labour too long on Gabriel because we know he's just a beast. Like, I mean, even Saliba said it in an interview earlier this week. It feels like Gabriel's basically carried him for most of the season, and thankfully his fitness has been exceptional, and it's been like that, to be honest, ever since we've got him. And therefore having someone as reliable as that, even in a dead rubber game, and we still don't have the depth that we hoped that we would have at the back. Still missing Tomiyasu. We don't know when or if he'll ever come back, kind of thing, and all this kind of stuff. So he's forced to play, and yet even when we conceded the second goal, what I love about him particularly is his character. Like, he was vexed, he was so annoyed, and that's the kind of people that you want playing at your football club. So again, nothing to say about Gabriel other than I don't think we had too many options other than have to play him. Kivior, well, I'll start with Ben White, which I guess, yeah, you could see he's missing the minutes in his legs. Like, he got cooked on that right hand side, or sort of PSV's left hand side, a few times, and he wasn't able to. And now I think their left winger was pretty quick, and I don't think Ben White's main forte is pace necessarily, but needless to say, you've seen him still come and manage to make up the ground and whatever, and I guess he just needs a bit of time to get up to speed. Kivior, I mean, yeah, I think he had that really good run season before last where he got into the side and he was doing pretty okay at left back, and then he had that game against Liverpool. I think Salah like kind of made a pretty difficult day for him, and that might have even killed off our season that year. But overall, was he signed to be the next Gabriel? No. Is he there to at least be a decent enough option as and when the injuries strike? Yes. Are you expecting him to play more than 2-3 games every so often? No. Have we had to rely on him more than we would have liked at crucial moments of the season? Yes. And is he good enough to manage that? Probably not. And on top of it, yesterday, he was playing at right centre half. It's not on his stronger foot. He's played there a couple of times, and I think he's always looked shaky in those situations. I always think he never looks fully very, very comfortable. But yeah, that was kind of my initial thoughts and feelings to him. I don't know if, do you have anything more specific
Yeah,
on the
just a
back
couple of
line?
little thoughts. I mean, one thing I'll just quickly talk about Ben White. I think with Ben White, he's never really been a great 1v1 defender anyway. Like, he's okay, but I think if anyone, you could ask anyone who watches Arsenal or who's an Arsenal fan, what Ben White's biggest limitation is usually that there's some players you can beat him 1v1, and he isn't always the best in the scenarios. I think back to the kind of the Chelsea game where he kind of Pedro Neto kind of just kept going left, right, put the ball in the box, and Malo Gusto almost scores, right? And you think, come on, just engage him there. But sometimes he doesn't want to. But I think going forward, we've missed him massively. I think the way he directly runs into the box outside on the other side, it just gives us a whole different element where Timber, I don't think maybe does that as kind of straight line. He's more kind of like with the ball and kind of offers up options. So they're two different players. I think we played very differently when the other one's playing. So that's one thing. I think Ben White, I think we've missed him a lot. I think we've missed him a lot more than people know. And I'm just glad he's back.
I couldn't agree. Oh man, I couldn't agree with you more. And especially from an attacking stance, I think you really nailed it there. And I suppose where Arteta originally started playing Timber was in fact left back, because I think he saw his ability to be able to retain the ball in the middle of the park and create, open up space from that perspective as more of his as his redeeming attribute compared to Ben White, yeah, I think you're spot on there
So I think,
that.
like I said, I think we missed him a lot, and I think I'm just glad that he's back. And fingers crossed, hopefully he'll just get more and more fitness as the season goes on, and then we'll hopefully see the best of him again, next season, because I think he's been probably carrying an injury for a long time, and he's just a warrior. He just doesn't complain, gets on with it, but you could tell when he's not fit. And then a quick point on Kiwior, I do like him. I like Kiwior. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's like the level that we need, but only because you're comparing it to someone like Gabriel and Saliba, who are just elite. And also, one thing I will say is it's very hard to be infallible as centre back when you're playing bit part minutes. It's not even like he gets under 18 minutes. It's not even like he gets under 23 minutes. He has to be available for the squad, and because of that, he then doesn't play a lot. And then when he does play, to expect him to not have moments where he makes mistakes or has issues, it's just a bit it's unrealistic, really. I think when he plays league and he's available, he does a good job, and I like him. Like, do I think that he's going to be the guy that we need there? No, but when you're looking at a backup centre back who can also profile as a left back, I mean, what more can you ask for, really? The only times I get upset with him are moments like Bournemouth, where you just miskick the ball and that should be an easy pass, right? Little things like that annoy me. Not the Salah stuff. Like the Salah stuff, listen, you're trying to engage, you're not really match ready like that, because there's an instinctual way that you play when you play football, one, but also when you play centre back. Asking someone to just come in and just play centre back off the bench and expect them to then handle arguably the best attack in the Premier League. Listen, with Miles Lewis-Skelly to the left of him, who wasn't really a staple in the team at that point. He only just started to play for us. With also then Ben White at right back, next to you on the other side, and then Partey at right back. So I try not to criticize him too much. I think for what he's done and for what he's worth, he's been fine, really. And
again, the amount of money that we spent on him, that's the point that I was making, right? I think he serves his purpose. You just ideally don't want to be in a situation where you're relying on him for so many games. But again, he was obviously, he starts all the international games for Poland, for instance, and he's still regarded super highly in Italy. And I'm sure there'd be a bunch of teams that would happily take him in a heartbeat, because I think, when he gets to play in his favoured position, which he's rarely done, I'm sure he'll be much better.
Consistently, right? And consistently, give him 10 games, give him 15 games, you're going to see the best Kiwior. And I think at that point, you're going to really look at him and think, you know what, this guy should be starting for a very decent team. I think he's going to be fine. I do expect him to move on in the summer, but I think wherever he goes, as long as he's playing consistently, I think he's going to be absolutely fine. I think he's going to do. And also, again, I think we're warped in our minds about football in general. It's not normal to be fantastic at centre back at 22 or 23 years old. Centre backs mature much later. I feel like when he turns 20, I don't know how old he is now, to be fair, but I think when he turns 26, 27, 28, he is going to be an absolutely fantastic centre back. I think he's going to put on a bit more man weight, and I think he's going to look really good. I think he's got a lovely left foot, and I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be absolutely fine. But yeah, I think he's not got much to worry about. I think he's going to have a very, very successful career wherever he ends up going. And I think hopefully we'll maybe get a bit of money for him, which would be nice. But yeah, I think that's probably all we need to say really about the game. But following what I wanted to ask,
there's one thing I want to mention though. I just want to mention, and just again, Declan Rice, and just seeing him in the flesh, as always, just reaffirms in your mind just how elite of a footballer he is. And even in a dead rubber game, how he was really dictating all of the good stuff that we did was just fantastic to see. And particularly what I found really interesting was that I felt like that was he was furthest forward more often than I had actually usually had seen him. And that might be a bit of an evolution that we might see him do against Chelsea. Because
a goal as well, right?
He's just awesome goal. Again, I feel like I don't know. Again, watching it on replays, sometimes you don't really get the let's say the right feeling of how quick the ball was going. I felt like the goalkeeper could have done a little bit better.
I don't know, man. That close to the header is very hard to get down. It came quick. Yeah, it's very hard to get down.
But you just see how close his hand was. Like, if he was able to get down a little bit sooner, then maybe. But you maybe like a Raya or someone who's a bit lower to the ground might have been able to do it. I don't know.
But honestly, I don't think many keepers are saving that unless you get lucky, because it's one of those things where when the ball's coming into the box like that, and it's pretty obvious he's going to head it, right?
Yeah.
So as a keeper, you're looking at it, and he's going to head it. So at that point, you have to think, well, he's got the whole goal to aim here, and I don't really have time to react. It's either just going to hit me and I'm going to save it, but if I commit either way, it's most likely going to go in. And I think what happens is it went to a position where you're not saving it. You're just not saving that.
Super difficult. Yeah.
Yeah,
But he made
the
the run.
biggest.
And that was the big thing, right? He made that box crashing run. He had the space. And I think actually I'd like to see him do more of it. And it'll be interesting to see now, because you actually saw in the game, interestingly, they were really swapping at certain points. Marino was actually really deep, and Declan would then just fly forward. And actually, he just has that X factor. He's got that blockbuster shot, that 1 minute class that might be able to just completely change the game, as he did against United. And then, he
That's
puts
really
back in the
interesting,
lead
actually,
in
that
this
you
game
mentioned
as
that.
well.
That's really interesting. You mentioned the Marino and Rice thing, because that's not something, again, maybe because I wasn't as paying attention to it as much as I usually do. I mean, I didn't really notice that. So that's actually really interesting technical evolution we might have, actually, where I do notice Marino drops in quite a lot when he's supposed to be playing up front. Like, I don't think he really traditionally plays up front, but maybe that's something they're working on, where he's dropping in and then Rice is making a kind of third man run past the defense.
Because it's really difficult to mark, right? You saw that yesterday. Like he was almost like not even really fully in the picture when Sterling was about to put that cross into the box, and then all of a sudden he's flying in. And as a defender, that's super difficult as sort of the holding midfielder and the centre half. You don't know when to pick up, who's picking him up, and it creates all that level of confusion and that chaos. So let's see if that ends up becoming a bit more of a feature as we try to facilitate this kind of lack of striker situation.
From my perspective, playing football and just watching football, but more so playing, the hardest thing to defend is third man runs, and it's the easiest way to kind of like break open the defense, because defending innately is reactive. It has to be, right? Because you're always reacting to what this attacker is going to do. It's very hard to very much predict exactly what's going to happen. And the thing with the third man run is that it's very hard in your brain for it to process that movement whilst you're focused on one, where the ball's going, but also on who you're marking at the time. So when someone kind of plays it to someone else, and at the moment, someone else is making that run, the player who's going to play the ball to them knows, right? Because they can see that guy. But it is, as much as you try to not ball watch, you have to know where the ball's going. And in that moment, it's very hard to track that third man run. So third man runs are absolutely, pivotal. And I think we don't do enough of it. So I'm hoping that we can do more. And that's a good thing. But I think let's say the last thing on Declan Rice, and I think this about him a lot, and it's probably the biggest compliment I can pay to him. I can just imagine playing against him is absolutely horrible. Horrible. Like, he is probably the most horrible player to play against. I can imagine anyone who plays against him, it just has the worst game. Like, they just hate it, because that guy's on you like a rash, and he's constantly there, and he's faster than you, and he's stronger than you, and he's good technically, and he's strong. Like, he's just amazing, what a player. And I think, like, again, that's the biggest compliment I can pay to him, is that I can imagine he's just absolutely just a horror to play against. It's just awful for anyone playing against him.
Honestly, I think he might be a big difference maker in our season. And I suppose in a competition like Champions League, there is that level of unpredictability, right? I suppose, in the league, it feels like PSV didn't watch any of our games, and weren't thinking about how to defend against us. And I never really understand how that so transpires in the Champions League, but it seems to be consistent. So, which brings us to our next set of opponents, who I don't know how much homework Don Carlo will actually do on Arsenal, but I'm hoping not a lot, and I'm hoping for, I don't know, just a moment where a certain French player comes to mind who scored probably the greatest goal I've ever seen in my lifetime, away at the Bernabeu, and just looks into the crowd and just has his arms aloft like this. I mean, that Henry goal is still one of my, I think, probably my favorite Arsenal goal.
Do you remember where you were when he scored that? Like, so do you remember back in your team?
Oh yeah, I really remember where I was. I had a tiny little Grundig TV. Don't know if anybody is that old that they remember that. I'm sure our Gen Z and whatever audiences will have no idea what I'm talking about. But it was like a brick that was this big, and I had it in my extremely ostentatious, over-the-top Arsenal-themed bedroom. But because my grandma downstairs had dibs on watching the TV, the big TV, on watching her Indian dramas, my granddad and I were watching it on my little single bed on this little, 16:9 TV screen. When he scored, oh man, did I run around that upstairs landing like a lunatic. And it was It's one of my favorite moments. So that's why, irrespective of what that, yes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on like sort of the penalty and everything that happened in the Atletico Real game. But I really wanted Real Madrid because I think that's the whole reason why you're in the Champions League, even though we might not, it's very likely that we won't even have Saka back for that game, for the first leg. Those are the nights you live for, really. So yeah. What about you? Do you remember where you were for
it's like one of those. I think it's one of the things where when you think back to like all the years when you're really young, you don't remember a lot of things, but there's key moments, like there's key core memories that you have, and that is a core memory for me. Like I remember I was wearing this kind of like blue, like it wasn't a football shirt, but it was like a blue t-shirt which I wore throughout the whole kind of Champions League campaign, and it was like a lucky t-shirt, and I was sitting there on my sofa at home, and there's just on my TV. I was just by myself. I don't know where my brother was, or my dad was, or my mom was. I don't know who was there, but I just remember watching it and just watching him score. And I was sitting in the exact same position for when Wayne Bridge knocked us out of the Champions League. So it's like, that is like, whenever I watch football Arsenal games, it's always in that same kind of living room and everything. And I just remember, him scoring, and then it's funny because I don't really remember the rest of the game. Like, then I can't, like, now I watched highlights today actually, and I was thinking, oh, actually, like, I remember the Reyes chance because that was when Casillas kind of gets across. And I remember that chance. I remember the Ljungberg one as well, where, you goes around the keeper and you think, oh, just dink it. Like, and then, but at the end of the day, I think we were what? I was like 11 and you were 12, like 12 years old. So we consciously watch football, but we didn't tactically understand as well as we maybe did in the next few years. I think when we got like 13, 14, 15, you started to kind of understand it a bit more. And I just remember, just being so happy, and then just going into year 6, like, the next day, and then they line you up outside your class.
School was huge that day, man. School, and especially because at least I don't know. Obviously, you grew up in West London, so I'm sure there was a time where Arsenal was still like we were still on still at our peak, or we were coming off our peak, let's say. But we have all the credit in the bank. But I grew up in the West Midlands, man, and it's only United or Liverpool fans, and that's it. So I was the only Arsenal fan in the village, and it was the greatest day at school. Like, literally no one believed we would do it, and we did it. And that's exactly what...
It was quarters,
it was, and then we played Villarreal afterwards. Exactly. So that was a huge game.
I remember that game as well, because I remember us conceding that penalty like really late, and Riquelme taking it, and then me just sitting there thinking, oh, this is going in, and then Lehmann obviously saving it, and that was so like I really remember that Champions League run. Unfortunately, I remember it too well, unfortunately, because obviously the final wasn't great. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you that, because I think that's one of my core memories, like that goal, and I'm sure all the Arsenal fans kind of like our ages. Cause I think anyone really younger than us, probably you might not remember it that well. I think we're probably like at that border of 9, 10, 11. Remember it?
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely.
And then anyone obviously older, I'm sure you're probably thinking about where you were. But I'm sure if you ask any Arsenal fan, maybe a few years younger or older than us going forward, where they were, they could probably remember where they were when they scored that. Because unfortunately, we don't have much history in the Champions League, So these moments are big. They're huge moments for us. So hopefully that changes, and hopefully we get a lot more. Like, I'm sure if you're asking Liverpool fans exactly where they were for all these goals, they'd probably say, well, we've done it so many times, so I don't know, that goes in there. Yeah. But when you're an Arsenal fan, unfortunately, because they're few and far between, right? These massive European nights. And but yeah, just moving on to kind of, in the next, I think the next couple of weeks or 3 weeks time. What are your thoughts, man? What are your thoughts on Real Madrid? I mean, you said that you wanted to get Real Madrid. I'm on the other side of that. I really didn't want to face Real Madrid because I just can't be bothered to deal with their like Champions League aura. Like, it just annoys me because I know that they just somehow get through. Like yesterday when I was watching it, you're sitting there thinking, I know you're playing awful right now, but I know you're going to get through somehow. But like, what do you think our chances are? I think you said Saka probably not going to be back. I think he might be back for the first leg.
He might be. As in, you don't know, right? He just hasn't, because then we'll have the international break in between, and I don't think there's that many games after that he might be able to get himself at at that kind of level where necessary, at least to start that game. I don't know, but again, that guy's a monster, so who knows? But look, our chances, being honest, pretty low. As in, it's just because exactly you couldn't have captured it better. Like, Champions League aura, it's a thing. It's happened to us against Bayern on too many occasions, and it's happened to us against Barcelona. And then it's against Real Madrid. We only have one. We don't have that many memories against Real Madrid, and the one we do have was actually when we managed to beat them. So that's all you can really hold on to. I think, obviously when we get closer to the game, we will properly break it down and proper preview in terms of who they have in their lineup and where we might be able to get some joy. I think what will work in our favour is that they are a team comparatively to Atletico who will try and attack us. And we are one of the best defences in Europe, best defence in the Premier League still at the moment. And that's what I think sometimes we're at our best is when we say, go on, try and break us down. And we might be able to hit them on the break, and hopefully we'll have some players back who might be able to cause them a bit of damage. And that could be the difference maker. Whereas I felt like playing against Atletico, he sets his teams up and they are grim watches, and we're not good against those sorts of sides. They're like a Newcastle or something, that they'll just sit 2 banks of 4. They've got some crazy players up front who will then just take you on the break, and they'll manage to get that 1 goal, and they'll defend it for their lives. And that's exactly what they did yesterday as well, right? They scored in the first minute, and they managed to take them all the way to extra time.
It's hard watch. I watched most of the game, and I'll be honest with you, there was someone who was saying like, "Oh, what a game of football!" Blah, blah. And I was like, "Were you watching the same game as me?" Because this is a hard watch, man. Like, this is just 2 teams giving absolutely everything just to somehow break the deadlock, and the quality was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse as the game went on, because people were just so knackered, because they bring this kind of like marathon level of football out of you, where you absolutely have to match their energy, because if you don't match their energy, you're going to lose, And I think that just, it means that as you get later on in the game, your quality dims a lot. Like Vinicius was getting it in the year from Bellingham because, he wasn't playing very well. Then Bellingham, to be honest with you, towards the end of the game, which again, absolutely monster athlete. I'm talking like in the 115th minute here, and him and Valverde are somehow still running and giving everything, but the quality is, not there because everyone's knackered. So it's, I think you're right. I think probably if it was anyone but Real Madrid, I would say probably I prefer to play the team other than Atletico. But it's just like one of those things where you're right. I think matchup-wise, probably Real Madrid are a better matchup for us. But the thing that's interesting is that it's kind of like the inverse of when we played them last, because we had a really makeshift defense. It was like a Bue, Flamini, Sendros, and Torre. And we had all our, wild right?
Times.
And they hardly conceded throughout that whole campaign. They were fantastic.
Dude, I barely conceded at all.
But then obviously we had Henry and Haleb and Fabregas and Perez and Ljungberg. So our heck were there. Whereas this time, it's the inverse of that, really, where we're probably going to have our defense. And I think, I forgot what her name is, the commentator yesterday, I think it's Sue something, I can't remember now. Maybe the one she's on Sky Sports, does Ref Watch sometimes. She made a really good point. She was like, Raya, Gabriel, Saliba, Rice. It's like that kind of like 4. You're not going to find many better 4s in the Champions League defensively like that. The only problem for me is I know what Arteta is going to do. He's most likely going to play Partey in the 6. And I think it takes away a lot of what that gives us defensively. And I think if he does that against Real Madrid, and again, we'll talk about this more in depth, we're going to probably find a few problems. But yeah, we can maybe discuss that in depth probably. I'm sure we will when the time comes.
Yeah, we should go through the players and,
matchups,
even yesterday. Yeah, matchups. Ancelotti at halftime yesterday took off Modric and I can't remember who else was playing in midfield, but he brought on Camavinga, and he knew that he needed to get a hold of the game, and that's the level of quality that they have on their bench to be able to flip it. And I think if we had a full strength squad, we might have had that level of flexibility on our bench to be able to change the tactics. Let's see. I mean, we're not in that position, but let's see. I think
if you go, I think this is the thing. I think if you go there with, and as much as I have my, my criticism of Havertz, like I do criticize Guy a lot. I don't think he's maybe the best option. One thing he does do is he performs in the Champions League. He understands what the Champions League level is like. And I remember him playing against Real Madrid for Chelsea that year, where they really should have got through. And he was dominant. He took them apart. He was killing them. But I think if you go there with, Havertz, Saka, and Jesus and Martinelli, then you're like, okay, listen, we can do something here, because I trust our guys. But it's hard, like I said, it's going to be difficult because it's not only just who you start with, like you mentioned very, very clearly, it's about what you can do to change it when things are, because the level you have to play at in the Champions League even in the regular 75 minutes, it takes a lot out of you, and how you feel maybe in the 70th minute of a Champions League game is maybe how you'd feel maybe in the 120th minute of an FA Cup game. That makes sense, You give everything.
That's so right, man. Like, and then you saw it like last season against Bayern, when we went away there, and you looking at the bench and you're like, there's nothing. We've got nothing. There's nothing that we can do to be able to do this. There's no legs. There's no legs. There's no one who can unlock the game, who can change the way you just even give you a different option in midfield, right? Or just like give you a different type of energy and something else for the opposition team to think about. And then you saw the Joshua Kimmich show in that game, and that's the difference as well.
Thing. Yeah,
and it's just kind of
get up for it, and then you kind of like. The thing is, that was their first. I was talking to my brother about this actually. I was talking to Sonny about this yesterday, or today actually, this morning. We were talking about how like last season that was their first experience of Champions League football in the quarterfinals against a big European team for a lot of those players, and that comes with its own challenges. And I think that experience last season, because it's not, let's be honest, we lost on one goal. We almost got through. We should have got penalty at the end of the first game. We probably should have won that game, and we might have gone through, right? But that experience is going to help them, because when they go and play Real Madrid, they're not going to feel like that's the first experience of them playing in that situation anymore. And no matter what anyone says, the more you do it, the more times you go out in those scenarios, eventually maybe you go out twice in the quarterfinals. Then the next season you get to the semifinals. Then maybe you go out 3 or 4 times in a row in the semifinals, like Man City did, or like Real Madrid did before they did the La Decima. You have to have those experiences, because then you get this understanding of what it's like, and you stop being so nervous. No matter what happens, unless you're Real Madrid, you're always going to have a Champions League final nerves. Like Champions League final is Champions League final. You're always going to have nerves in that game. But the games before that precede that, the more you play them, the more you get used to it, the more you feel like you deserve to be there, you belong to be there, and, you play better. So I very much think how we play and set up this season, you'll see some marked differences to how we played last season. I don't think we're going to be as naive. I think we'll, be a bit more reserved, and I think we're going to see a bit more of a mature performance. I hope anyway, right? But Champions League is the Champions League.
That's it, man. That's it. Well, I guess we got a few minutes now to think. We're thinking a bit too far in the future. We might have a bit of a top 4 challenge to see off on on Sunday.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the Chelsea game, man. What's your, I think they've been a bit of a hot and cold side this season. I think they've been difficult to sort of pin down in terms of what they're about. I think Maresca arguably has done. I think you have to say he's done a really good job in terms of, I think, taking a very disparate and still very confused sort of dressing room. Undoubtedly a lot of talented young players, but to gel them into a team and give them some tactical cohesion was the hard part of the job. And he's kind of done that. But then he even rightly called it himself. I think at the beginning of the season, they were kind of taking a lot of people by surprise, and people were assuming that they could really be in the fight. I think I remember one point somebody saying, they could be in the hunt for the title. And then Maresca was like, straight up, he was like, no way, that ain't happening. And he's proven right, because, the likes of Cole Palmer have gone off the boil, and they've had injuries to Nicholas Jackson and who was scoring goals and stuff like this. But yeah, I know you've got some mates and stuff who are Chelsea fans as well. So like, what's the... I don't know if you really talk to them about it, but yeah, what's the overall sentiment and feeling? Yeah,
the one compliment I have to pay Chelsea fans, which I don't like to do because I don't often do it, is that they know their team and they're quite honest about their team. And from a understanding point of view, I do always respect their opinions, and they know that it's not been the easiest season for them. They understand the level of their team, and they do. A lot of them don't like Maresca, they don't like the way the team is kind of fallen off a little bit, and they feel like they kind of need to change managers. I think that's just a Chelsea reflex. I think the doorbell goes off and they're like, we got to change manager. Something like that. So I think that's just a reflex from Chelsea fans. But at the end of the day, they have a lot of quality, and regardless of whether or not Cole Palmer scored in like 2 months or something like that, he's the kind of player who can turn up and trust me, we're the team to do it. We're the kind of team to play anyone into form. I think, as we know.
That's right? It. If you need a goal, you know who to play against.
You know who to play. It's like, you need a goal, you call 0800 Arsenal, man, because we're going to get you
man,
one.
We're ready.
That's it.
We'll put the ball on the red carpet for you, man. We'll even pass the ball back to you.
That's it. And
you can rely on Trossard to do that. So,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's hopefully not do that this weekend, because I think, like we mentioned in the last episode, it's a really big game. It's a really big game. It's a huge game, because I think if we win, we pretty much secure top four because there's about 9 games to go. We create a 9-point gap between us and Chelsea. They have some really tough games coming up. You know, I think if you speak to a lot of Chelsea fans right now, they're quite worried actually because they're unsure if they're going to make top four. And I think that will be I think that defines whether or not Maresca has a job at the end of the season. I think if he gets top four and they get Champions League top 5 Champions League, I think he probably just about stays in a job. I think if he doesn't and they capitulate, whether or not that's due to circumstance and injuries, I think Chelsea will be, on the market for someone to do it because that's just how the club is. They don't really wait around. They probably feel like they've invested a lot of money and time into the squad, and if they can't get top four in a season like this, where they started so well, then that's obviously not a guy they want to stick out with. So I think we really need to, and I'm sure Arteta will do this. I think he needs to really drum into them that this is a really important game, and I think hopefully we should win. I expect us to win, but you never know. What about you? How do you feel about going into that game? What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking back a little bit to the game that we played at the Bridge, really, and it was a bit of the Pedro Neto show, and I think someone who unfortunately has a lot of injuries, but I really rate as a player. He has that explosive and almost unpredictable kind of thing to his game, which I know that we struggled against. I'm trying to figure out exactly who do they have, who's injured in
They've got a few
their
injuries.
side
They've
at the
got quite a few
moment.
injuries, actually. I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a sense and a feeling of like what are we really against. So arguably, I would still expect us to go and win that game. Now, will it be as simple as I'd hope? Probably not. But it's still looking like maybe, as they say, Nicholas Jackson's not back. He'll be back after the international break. Same with Noni Madueke. But other than that, then I think they relatively have a full strength side. But yeah, there's not that many, other than Neto, really, there's not many players that scare me as such. So again, I'd expect our defense to be able to manage that. Now, I think fundamentally the question is, are we going to have enough guile in attack to break them down? And hopefully, again, like some of this sort of slight changes that we're seeing with Declan Rice bombing forward a bit more and whatever might be the thing to be able to unlock them. Let's see. So overall, yes. Should we have enough in the tank? For sure. Could we still make a meal out of it? We might even concede the first goal on a stupid counter or something like this, and then we're chasing, and then the Emirates turns into its kind of anxious, full of tension kind of place, and then it gets on the players' backs. I don't know, man. So it's not the easiest one to call, but we should have enough. I'd say at least we have managed to win 2-3-1 here, but. Yeah,
I was just going to say, if I had to put money on it, I think Chelsea are a team who's not really going to sit in and try and defend against us. I think probably they're going to, as much as they've maybe tried 1-2, some of their players are just not going to be able to do it. And I think because of that, I think we might load up for one of those Man City games where we absolutely just smash them. To be honest with you, I feel like we might just smash them. To be honest,
I love last year's game when we put 5 past them. So I'd love a performance like that.
I wouldn't be surprised. This might be clipped and I'll be on Twitter and people will be laughing and this and that, but I honestly think like this is the kind of game where they have too much kind of like pride to come in there and just sit in a low block and just try and stifle us. And I think they're going to try and go for it because I think they understand what a win does for them as opposed to a draw.
And
I think what's going to happen is I think that will probably open them up. And I think the players know that. They know that. They haven't won in the Premier League for 3 games now. And the Emirates is going to be expecting a performance on Sunday. Especially on a day where your title rivals are possibly going to win another trophy and the team who knocked you out and slapped you out of the competition are going to win a trophy, 2 hours later, you're not going to want to drop points and then watch one of those guys get the trophy after that, So I think they're going to have to rise to the occasion. And I think usually when we expect to have a performance against a big team, we usually do, and I trust Arteta in the top 6 games. So I'm quietly confident that we probably will win that game quite comfortably. But famous last words, I guess.
Let's see, man. Let's see. I mean, look, they struggled against some of the big sides as well, big sides. I mean, they lost against Villa quite comprehensively. They weren't great in that game. Brighton, they got beat by twice.
Yeah,
City,
yeah.
even though against a very poor City side, they lost. So you might be right. I think maybe they just, again, it's some of that experience. They have so many young players in their team.
Yeah.
It feels like a little bit like, that young Arsenal side, right? Used to come up against the big top 6 boys or top 4 guys and used to get smacked.
That's it. Naive, right? Just naive. Just get smacked. And that's just what it is. You learn from these things, and they're kind of doing that right now. I think that's what happens when you're in a top 4 battle. You have those players who are a little bit too proud to kind of just sit in and not want to lose, and instead you just get beat by the team who's just a little bit more savvy than you. So the fingers crossed. I expect us to win. We've had a good record against Chelsea at home for a while now. So
that's true. True.
Let's hope. But I know you have to. I know you've got to head off.
Yeah, I've got to bounce, man. But this has been.
No worries.
It's been good. It's been good. Let's hope for another win. It's always good to chat to you and at least reflect on the game, and whether or not anybody's listening, I don't know. But if you are, we've really enjoying doing this. I think it's one of the things I look forward to most in the week at the moment. So
it's good.
Nice one, man.
It's fun. Yeah,
and then we chat after
hopefully
Sunday.
Yeah, maybe we can do like a little quick kind of like pre-game thing on Sunday. Maybe we can just like do like a little 10-20 minute kind of preview if you're about, and then we'll chat after, won't we? So yeah,
that's for sure. Definitely, depending on the result, might not be straight away afterwards. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Appreciate you.
Take care, man. Have a good evening.
Bye bye.